Magalhaen to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Saints FC podcast.
Half centenary.
That's a bit of a milestone, Tom, isn't it?
Now, who'd have thought we'd get here, John?
Who would have thunk it? I would actually like to say at this point, it's probably a good point to say a big thanks to our listeners. And Tom, I'm just going to read out some rather, I think they're quite splendid little facts for us. So do we want to start with, I don't know, should we go with kind of like the furthest flung listeners?
Excellent. So
Okay.
this is geographical distance to London.
Well, I've not worked it out, but you know, as you'd perhaps expect, our biggest listenership is in the United Kingdom,
Reassuring.
then the United States of America. Probably the furthest away is New Zealand.
You can't really get much further than
No,
that.
but it's kind of the other ones that I like to kind of, the ones which just catch you by surprise, like hello to our 16 listeners in the Philippines.
Wow, 16.
Yeah,
that's
probably
good.
one Saints fan listening 16 times, I think.
Either way, it's good.
You know, obviously Channel Islands, you'd expect that with the whole
Yeah.
Matt Letizia connection. Japan, I wonder if they could be your friends, Tom.
They could be, we are.
That we'll talk about a little bit later on. China, Iceland. I wonder who the Icelandic
Iceland.
Saints are. Cambodia. I think I know someone who's heading there for their
Yeah,
honeymoon.
That's me, listeners. Yeah.
Zambia, I'm quite pleased with that
Wow.
one. We've got a Z. Tajikistan, Sri Lanka,
Sri Lanka,
Nepal,
awesome.
Morocco. I like to think the Nepalese ones, maybe someone, you know, going up Mount Everest listening to the Saints FC podcast.
As we drove him onto the peak.
Yeah. Chad, Dominican Republic.
Chad. Fascinating.
Yeah. So
Chad,
anyway.
Yeah, Chad, the biggest country in Africa. I just made that up.
What geographically
Yeah,
in terms of size?
Square mile.
Yeah, it could be. Anyway, say hello to Saints fans all over the world. We would absolutely love to hear from you if you are, you know, out abroad, whether you're an expat, whether you're just that kind of like random El Salvadorian Saints fan. We want to hear from you. It would be great to hear from you. One Saints fan who is actually travelling around India did get in touch, Chris Bevan Lee. He's listening to Saints FC podcast whilst hoofing it around India, and he's come up with a Højbjerg chant. So I don't know if this is kind of like Bollywood inspired.
Okay.
Tom, you know what the deal is here. Are you able to read that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, he hasn't given us a tune, but there is a Titanic reference, so he feels it's fitting for Southampton.
Okay.
Do you want to go for it?
I will, because you make me. Oi, oi, Højbjerg hits it like an iceberg. Maybe we should make him our new captain. Maybe it is, again, another Boney M one.
Yeah, could be, couldn't it?
Could
Yeah,
it
like
work? I just
Rasmussen.
instinctively go towards
Oi,
Boney M.
Yeah.
Yeah, hits it like an iceberg. Interesting. Not sure
Yeah,
what
I mean, hitting icebergs for things from Southampton has not necessarily
No.
worked out particularly well in the
icebergs
past.
very slow.
Yeah, I'm
Hey.
sure he's referencing the Titanic, and the Titanic was pretty quick for its time.
It was.
But after it hit an iceberg,
Things went downhill.
yeah, things went in pretty much the same direction that things are going for Saints anyway. So, yeah, maybe a slightly more positive slant on that. But I agree. I'd like to see Højbjerg as our captain. I think it makes sense to make him the on-pitch captain.
Yeah, I think Bertrand, let's say, is not enamoured himself to the fans, so
No.
I think Højbjerg will be a popular choice.
Anyway, so if you'd like to get in contact like Chris has done, you know how to do it. It's saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at saintsfcpodcast. should we have a little chat with Jeremy Wilson at this point?
Do that, John.
Do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to have Jeremy Wilson from the Daily Telegraph on the line. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Jeremy, as a Saints fan, it's proving to be a tough season to support the Saints, isn't it, at the moment?
It is, yeah. Sort of the hope of a bit of bounce from the staying up last season hasn't really happened, and it seems to has that feel of a sort of steady decline at the moment, I suppose, from the last year or two. So, yeah, I think the way that the team stayed up, there's that sort of hope that it might kind of roll over into the season. They've seen like a bit of optimism, and Mark Hughes seemed to have a sort of support of the fans and everything. But I think the problem is the issues in the team, sort of namely the obvious things really, I suppose, a kind of lack of attacking pace and sort of a bit of unpredictability. That kind of Mane factor that was in the team before hasn't really been replaced, and I think that is still really lacking. And then I think the knock-on is the sort of confidence becomes an issue, the lack of goals becomes an issue, and even when we get a lead, there's not, you sort of have that feeling that it's that they're going to struggle to see it out. So it's the only bit of sort of glint of light at the moment is the fact that there's quite a few bad teams in the division. So someone did some statistics on it today, and I think Saints were, if we carry on as we are, we'll finish on about 25 or 27 points, something like that. It was, and yet we stayed up. So I mean, it's a really odd division because the top 4 or 5 are sort of all on the kind of points tally that would normally win the league, and the bottom sort of 7 or 8 are on the kind of points tally that would normally be sure to get relegated. So it's a slightly unusual Premier League so far.
Yeah, you mentioned a few points about kind of like Saints issues there. One I want to kind of pick up on especially today is the stuff that happened at that kind of like director chairman level last week with Les Reed being sacked and Martin Hunter being sacked as well. And I read your kind of little article on that. I mean, clearly there is a malaise across the club that seems to be in every single element of the club at the moment. Do we think this is going to change anything? Is it going to turn stuff around? Is there a glint of hope that us fans can kind of cling on to?
The thing that slightly worried me reading Ralph Kruger's interviews that he did with the local media, with the Echo and with the Solent, I think he did, is there didn't seem like there was a lot of money there, and I don't get the impression that the owners are really not quite. It's very different to when the Liebherr family first came in, and they were clearly keen to invest, keen to get the club in the Premier League, and that was sort of their business plan as well as their sort of ambition. I don't think that's. I think it's just trying to stay in the Premier League in those sort of revenue streams that the Premier League gets. On a sort of self-sustaining budget, it seems to be the aim of the current ownership. So the fact that Ralph Kruger said there wasn't, or suggested there wasn't, a sort of enormous amount of money was a bit worrying, because I think when Van Dijk was sold at the end of December, I know that money has been spent since then, and it sort of felt like the summer business was reasonably positive. I was disappointed last January because I really thought when Van Dijk went, the fact that the deal was done in December, you sort of thought it was done for a reason, and it was done because something fairly eye-catching would happen quickly after, and that just didn't pan out that way at all. So that side of it worries me. I just don't think there's not the approach to investing and spending, putting in extra money from the ownership that, and a lot of clubs don't do that. And, there's a whole different argument about whether people should expect the owner to fund a club anyway, and whether that's healthy. That's a whole different debate. But it's the fact of the matter is that was kind of how the Liebherrs were doing it early on. They might have been putting loans on the clubs that eventually may have had to be paid back, but they were spending quite a lot of money relative to where the club was, whereas now that's not really happening. And it just seems that it's hard without really good work on the recruitment side and on the training ground, if that's your model to really push on, it is possible still to be successful with that type of model, but you do need to be doing really well in recruitment and on the training ground, the coaching, the manager, and those two departments as well have not been, when Pochettino or Koeman were the manager, that those departments plus the recruitment were performing really well. So it was okay if they were in some transfer windows sort of cashing in or having to sell a lot of players. But now, I don't think Hughes. I thought to be fair to Hughes, I thought when he came in, I thought the team did improve, even though we didn't really get that many points at the end of the season, and it was obviously there was the win at Swansea was decisive, but I did think that we did improve. I did think we were a lot better team in a lot of those games, like the Arsenal-Chelsea game. There were different games that we might not have got points from or many points from, but we did look a much better team after the change of manager, even though we were still a bit lucky to stay up and a bit dependent on other teams falling away. But I just haven't really seen that since the start of the season. I think we've regressed, really. We look a worse team. I mean, compare the Chelsea games at the end of the season to the one at the beginning of this season. There's a big difference, really, in the performance level, which is quite worrying. And then when you look at sort of Hughes' wider record, sort of at Stoke, I mean, I think it's easy as fans and I think a lot of fans of a lot of clubs are very dismissive quickly of managers, and they'll sort of say, oh, he was a failure there and he was this and that everywhere. But actually, I think if you go through Hughes' record, he obviously had a very bad time at QPR, but apart from that, he's had decent periods everywhere he's been, and Stoke had some good seasons under him. So I think to be fair to him, I don't think his record is on balance too bad. But I suppose the worry is that he sort of came off that job and then into this one, and he's not really, if you sort of add up his last year or two in the Premier League, it's not particularly pretty for him at the moment. So that's a bit of a worry, and it seems to have. It does feel like there's a bit of a psychological issue there now as well, especially in terms of when we get ahead in games. There's a definite problem there that they just don't seem to have got over, sort of just finding a way to get over the line. And I know that there was a lot of frustration on Saturday with the sort of manner of, and Austin's goal and everything, but it's difficult to. As much as it was really frustrating, I think it's not particularly good for anyone, especially inside. It's fine for the fans to be furious and all the rest of it, but I think inside the club they've got to be quite realistic about the fact that it's only one. I think it's one home game, isn't it, this season, this year, and that a lot of leads have been thrown away, and Watford might have had a penalty in the game anyway, and it's sort of just to sort of focus everything on that, which was a bit what the post-match reaction was. I'm sure when they come in after the weekend and in the cold light of day, they do look at everything and look at what's gone wrong and what should be improved. But I'd be quite worried if they were just simply sort of pointing fingers at referees, because it's part of a pattern basically to not get over the line in a home game, and that wasn't the only important decision in the match as well. Right. Sort of another one went with us. So I don't think you can sort of as frustrating as it was, I don't think it would be beneficial to overly sort of focus on that.
No. What I found kind of quite interesting about last week and the sacking of Reed is I think probably a lot of us were maybe expecting Hughes might have his head on the line, but the noises coming out from the club and from Kruger look like Hughes has still got the job at least for the short or the medium term, because they don't really have anyone on the board left who can make that sort of decision in appointing a new manager. So we're a little bit in limbo at the moment.
Yeah, the information, as much as I know, is that they do want to replace Les Reed. They do want to replace him from outside. So I don't think Ross Wilson, who's sort of been the head of recruitment, as you know, is going to step up. I think they want to bring somebody in to do Les Reed's job. So until that happens, I guess it's quite difficult, as you say, if they were to change manager, who would lead that process. I guess it would be sort of Ross Wilson, Ralph Kruger would be the sort of senior people, but I think you would expect there'd be someone else that would oversee that before that could or might happen. I think in terms of Mark Hughes' job, I think the feeling, the sort of sense that I get is that I think that, and I think a lot of fans shared this thought as well. It got to the point where it wasn't really tenable to keep changing manager without the person or the people who were doing the recruitment at some point taking responsibility for where things had gone wrong. And I do think with Les Reed, you've got to look at the big picture. I do think in the cold light of day, you'd have his sort of contribution has been very positive over the sort of full course. And okay, the club had money and they had good managers at different times, but the bottom line is we were in League One when he came in, and you'd go to the training grounds, you go to the academy. The place was transformed in that period. The last few years have not been, the recruitment's not gone well, but I think it had just got to the point where it wasn't sort of tenable to say, let's go for what would have been a fourth manager in sort of 2 and a bit years. Is that right? Yeah. Something like that. And sort of continuously say it's the manager's fault. Having said that, I do think Hughes is now. I think the significant thing about what happened last week is that the board and what's left of the board after Les Reed's gone, they're not going to wait until February this year if things don't improve. I think there was a definite feeling at the end of last season that they got it wrong by waiting, and that they risked the club's Premier League status, and it could have. Let's be honest, it could have gone the other way last season. It was a bit because of an upturn in performances, and a bit because of other clubs basically falling as well. So I think that what we saw is this feeling we can't let it slide. We have to do things. We have to make changes, and I think this was the first part of that. And if results improve, then that's fine. That will be all that happens. But I think if we get to Christmas time or December, well into December, and certainly with the January window coming, if we're still sort of down around where we are now, or even in the bottom three, I would expect them to change the manager as well. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but my very strong feeling this year from sort of speaking to people around the club, excuse me, is that they want to act and not let it slide this year. So I don't think Hughes is under immediate pressure, but I don't think equally it will. I don't think they'll sort of not leave it as it is if things don't improve.
Right, Jeremy, I'm going to ask you one very last kind of quickfire question before I let you get on. If let's say Hughes is sacked around Christmas time, January time, who would you like to see come in and take over as the Saints manager for the rest of the season?
Crikey! I haven't even given that a second thought, to be honest. Jesus, can I come back to you on that? Can I come on another time?
I'll tell you what, why don't you have a little think about it and text me, and we'll drop it onto the show later tonight.
Yeah, drop it onto the show later, because I haven't. Do you know? I haven't even stopped to think about that for a second. So I wouldn't want to sort of shout out a name that I've not really thought properly about. I think that they should go for someone that fits with the model that they want to do, and stick with it this time, rather than sort of. I think they tried too hard to do that with the sort of appointments with Puel and Pellegrino, but I think they do need to try and find someone that fits with their recruitment and what they want to do. And I think that would depend a lot on who comes in as well in the Les Reed job.
Yeah.
But I'll text you a better thought out answer, because I think a lot of it flows from who comes in the other job as well.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Thanks very much.
I think Paul
Jeremy.
Mitchell's been a big miss as well. I'd add in that in terms of who they then bring in.
Well, I suggested maybe he should be the person they bring in instead of Les Reed.
He to me is one of the big. So if we're talking about someone they should go and get, I don't know the sort of exact details of the relationships, but he's obviously at Leipzig now, and I think he left, as far as I know, in good in pretty good terms, although he went to Tottenham. He left Tottenham and he's at Leipzig, and he was outstanding in that job that he did, sort of working very closely with Pochettino and Cortese when he was at the club. And I think he would be someone that, if you look at his record at Saints and then at Tottenham, and then you sort of look at where Saints have slipped a little bit in the last few years, there is a sort of correlation with when he's departed. And I think he wanted a bigger role at a club, and that might have been part of to do with his sort of Tottenham exit. I don't know exactly, but I think he was someone that was seen that could step up into a wider role. So I think he would be someone that, if they could persuade him to come back, he was a really sort of impressive figure, I thought, at the club. So he would have a better answer than me as well on the manager front, because he was like Les Reed, he was very across all the trends in Europe and who the sort of coming managers were and the different managers were that they could consider. And I think that they should be, they should go for someone that fits the model and stick with it this time, someone who fits what they want to do in the long term. But it has to be sort of someone in partnership with whoever places Les Reed. I think one sort of follows the other, really. So, but let's hope Mark Hughes can turn it around first, because I think that certain managers do get a bit of a bad press, and it's sort of like, you go on social media or whatever, and I read that Mark Hughes has been a failure everywhere, or I read that, Harry Redknapp, he's having this row with Gary Neville, he was rubbish everywhere, and this person was rubbish and it's not right. It's a nonsense. If you go through, Arsene Wenger's a fraud or whatever, it's you go through their managerial track records, and these those ones I just mentioned have managed some of the most games in the Premier League. And I think all three of them are in the top 5 or 6 most games in the Premier League, and they've had bad periods and they've had good periods at clubs, but they've had some very good periods at clubs as well. And I think you can't, in fairness to Mark Hughes, he's had some, his job that he did at Fulham, Blackburn, and early on at Stoke. You have to sort of accept the possibility that he's a good manager and he could turn it around still. And I think that's the sort of hope in the short term. But I do think that they'll make a change if things haven't improved by January.
All right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy.
Okay, thanks for having me.
So, just got off the phone with Jeremy Wilson, sports correspondent at the Daily Telegraph. Used to be at the Daily Echo. Big Saints fan himself. What did you make of Jeremy Wilson's comments? I know we kind of kept it kind of quite board focused in terms of my questioning, but he did talk about the team quite a lot as well.
The thing that really struck me is he's clearly, I know he's a professional sports writer and obviously has no allegiances, but he's also clearly a Saints fan. And the thing that struck me was how he sounds like most Saints fans, just entirely fed up.
Yeah.
I can't work out if he's got a heavy cold or he's just having to watch Saints.
I think he probably had a heavy cold as well.
But no, he sounded pretty fed up. But I think he raised some really important points. The Telegraph, it's no secret, we've mentioned it loads of times before, seems to be the sort of go-to paper for Saints, for their comms team to sort of get news out there. So you think he's probably got a pretty good inside line on what the club's thinking, even if he does play it down. Interesting things I think it was kind of on Hughes. They won't get rid of him, but also they won't take as long to get rid of him as they took to get rid of Pellegrino, which I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, it's kind of again a bit of a will they, won't they situation. It certainly seems like in the club's short-term strategy doesn't involve getting rid of Mark Hughes. The club's short-term strategy involves getting someone in who then, should they need to, will be the person who can then replace Mark Hughes using their contacts, their knowledge of the game. Which, when you look at it, with Les Reed out of the picture, the board, or the ownership board, as we heard about from Ralph Kruger in his interview with the Daily Echo, is 2 members of the Gow family.
So that's Gow and his daughter.
Yeah, Nelly. We've got Katrina Lieber.
Yeah, who's got 20% stake.
Yeah, we've got the finance lady.
Isn't that Nelly, or is that someone else?
No, Nelly's... there's another...
There's a Chinese finance lady, which they didn't name.
Yeah, and then we've got Ralph Kruger.
Yeah.
So that's 5 people in charge of decision making at the club who basically don't know anything about football at all.
And there was a story in the Times today. It was kind of a diary piece, in the sports section about how apparently how Gal will select the next manager himself because he's been unimpressed with the last two that have been.
Did it seriously say that in the Times?
Yeah, it does say that in today's Times. So how much truth there is in that, I don't know.
Hopefully none, but he wouldn't be the first Chinese owner to make some pretty interesting. I mean, think of Cardiff's. Oh, he wasn't Chinese.
He's Malaysian. Yeah. But yeah, it's there's a couple of arguments in there. One is they can't really pick anyone who's going to do much worse than the incumbent. But yeah, weird. And you're right. Like if you think about it, there's a total dearth of footballing knowledge there. It's just so nuts.
Yeah. Jeremy did actually suggest a replacement for Les Reed, which is interesting. It's one of the names that I suggested to my brother when he was here last week, which is Paul Mitchell, who is a man that has been at Saints before, was heavily involved in the recruitment, was heavily involved in the kind of the good period of the Les Reed era, if that's what we want to call it. So you think of the 8 years that Les Reed was there. Things went very well.
Probably for 5 of that, you'd argue
for 5 years, I say, yeah.
And you could even argue the Puel year was actually it was a golden year by what we've got now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what the truth of or perspective can do to past figures. But yeah, so Paul Mitchell, interesting. Jeremy was obviously very, very impressed with Paul Mitchell the times that he met him, the times that he spoke to him. He's a young guy. He's done it before for Saints, and potentially he's up, for that step up. But
but what's the job? I mean,
director of football. You're basically in charge of the way. So the manager is just one of the cogs, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the modern way, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, look, the club needs I think they kind of glossed over it in their statement when they talked about Reed, but they say, we're conducting, a thorough investigation of all football activities. There's a really good, again, like we spoke about before, Shelley has written a really good post on St Mary's Musings about this. But it's not a particularly original thought, but he's very eloquent way he puts it, which is the club has lost its way.
Yeah,
absolutely lost its way. It's funny now. You almost know names in the reserve team, the under 23 teams, as well as names of the players in the first team because they're just the same guys, like Smallbone, Valerie. These guys that seem to score almost. I mean, he's scoring like week in, week out. Teller. They seem to be scoring like week in, week out, and it's weird because where is again? Sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but where's the pipeline for those guys?
Yeah. But one of Shelley Mushers' kind of more original thoughts, or I suppose slightly different from the narrative that's out there amongst Saints fans, is he wasn't pinning it all on Les Reed, and he's not particularly hopeful about Les Reed leaving. So Shelley Mushers kind of recognises the good work that Les did in the 4-5 years before things started to get a little bit sour. But really kind of actually saying we shouldn't be focusing our hatred towards Les Reed, who was actually quite instrumental in some of the good things that happened, throughout the early Marcus Lieber ownership, the rise up through the divisions. But actually we should be pointing the finger of blame at the owners. And he makes comparisons between schools and government and the people that government actually serve, not necessarily being the people who voted for them. But yeah, I mean, he's got an interesting point though, hasn't he? And it is a little bit worrying. So with Les Reed gone and with that ownership board in place, they've really got to get someone in quite quickly who does know about football and can step into those shoes and maybe freshen up that Les Reed role.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't necessarily agree with this hatred of the owners. I don't think the owners have... It's amazing how the owners have not communicated at all to the fans. I think that is a real boo-boo.
I think it's not only... I think it's weird.
It's weird. I mean, it's kind of 101, you'd think. Yeah. But the club's malaise goes further back than Gao. They've lost their way in terms of the young players coming through, the style of football. We saw on Saturday our third formation so far in 11 games this season. Whether we'll see it again, we don't know. And I think, if you look at what, you've got to judge, all you can really do is judge Gal by what he's done. All right, he's not spoken to the fans, which is bad, which is weird because it's free, so you'd think he'd just do it. And also he'd do it via their own website, so he's got complete control over the copy, nothing's going to go wrong. No one's saying he should be interviewed by The Sun. Yeah. But what's weird is he backed Hughes. He's backed Hughes, and this isn't weird, but Saints fans have got it in for Gal. Mark Hughes must have gone to him this summer and said, right, I'm your new manager. Here's the players I want. I want Armstrong. Here's the players I want. That are on offer to me. These are the ones I want. I want Armstrong.
No, I think if you look at Hughes' press conference before the game at Watford, he made it quite clear that he didn't have as much involvement in the transfers as he wanted. And I think that's one of the reasons why, Vestergaard's not been getting a place. It's almost Hughes saying to the board, the players that you've given me are not good enough. I don't want these players. I want my own players.
When in Mark Hughes' managerial career has anything happened to Mark Hughes that's been bad, that's been Mark Hughes' fault? All right, Saturday, we had a goal disallowed. But, every week, the boy who cried wolf, it just doesn't have an impact anymore. It demeans him as a man, and as someone who was such a strong, tough, no-nonsense footballer. It demeans the club because we're just becoming a bit of a joke that no matter what happens, Saints can score 17 own goals, because the linesman gave a wrong throw in the first half. Hughes, everything with Hughes suggests that he is a man that struggles to take the blame. Yeah, and what the club are doing right now with this kind of like Charlie Austin's interview, everyone loves it. It's great. It's a very Trump thing to do. So Trump fires the Attorney General, biggest thing he's done, catastrophic constitutional thing. All anyone talks about is some reporter that gets barred from a press conference. We need to face up. And Jeremy Mays is a really good point, which is again, Southampton have failed to win at home. It's one win this calendar year. Again, they failed to hold on to a lead. Again, they failed to score more than one goal.
It's just this calendar year. That's one win since November last year. That's a full 12 months. Not just 2018.
So what's that? That's one. So that's the last one before that was the Everton game.
Yeah.
Which I've said it before. I always remember it because it's when the week after I got engaged. So that was a long time ago.
That's when life was good.
That was when everything. So I had money in my pocket. I don't go with this. I don't go with this it's not Hughes' fault. B, I think maybe Reid does deserve more credit, because if you think football's like politics, isn't it? Most careers end in failure. Les Reid had 5 or 6 good years out of 8, and that's more than most people will get out of the game.
Yeah. Should we move on from this? Basically, the main topic of discussion at the club, which is perhaps because it's a little bit more interesting than the performances, which are so predictable, is what on earth is going on at the top, The Gal family, they've spent their £210 million on the club, and they want the club to be sustainable. Financially sustainable club, that sounds like a very sensible thing, but as a fan, you want to see them invest money and blah, 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 which is what happened under Marcus Lieber, and it was really fun.
Yeah, but they've spent money in it. The players they bought have been pony. It's not like they've not invested. How much they spent on basketball? 18 million?
Yeah.
We've got £35 million worth of young attacking footballers out on loan that you'll probably never see in a Saints shirt ever again in Carrillo
and Boufal. Yeah.
They spent 17 million on Vestergaard. It can't get off the bench. They've spent 50 million on El Yunusi, who looks totally out of his depth. Yeah. And Armstrong is still an unknown quantity. They bought Danny Ings. Danny Ings actually looks like he's a good player, very good player.
So I suppose the other thing as well, which I thought was quite interesting in the St Mary's Musings article by Shelley, was the Angus Gunn transfer thing. Totally. And so this is the thing where he was saying that, under Paul Mitchell and Les Reid, they made mistakes in terms of the transfer window. We've made plenty of mistakes along the way. We got a hell of a lot right as well. But he was saying that he thinks the transfer policy has changed from actually trying to find the right players to fit into the Saints team, and now it's actually about trying to find the gem that you can polish and then sell on. So the transfer policy is more about finding someone low cost, making them look all shiny and bright, selling on for loads of money. Basically, they want to do the Virgil van Dijk over and over and over and over again, rather than actually looking at what does the team need and trying to fill the position there. And Angus Gunn is his kind of case in point. Very good, young, promising goalkeeper. But we'd already solved that problem with Alex McCarthy. So did we actually need him to improve the team? No.
Yeah.
I mean, he's only played in the League Cup. He was fantastic in it. But, Fraser Forster could be playing in the League Cup.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Now we've got, 70, depending on who you believe, 70, 80 grand's worth a week of goalkeeper. Who's the third choice goalkeeper?
What's he even doing?
And he isn't even playing, and he's not
Fraser
playing for the
Forster?
under 23s. And I think they can have older players, and they're allowed like one or two, aren't they?
But has he retired from football? I mean, he was England's second choice goalkeeper to Joe Hart, as Joe Hart was very. He was destined to be England's number one.
I mean, like he's not getting. I mean, to not even get on the bench, not even play for the junior team. Like Alfie Jones is playing, I think, for the under 23s. It's just totally bizarre. But again, you're right. It's haphazard. It's almost like we've got so much, and we haven't got so much, but it's almost like we've got so much money that, oh my God, if a player like Gunn comes on the market, we've got to get him to stop someone else getting him. It's almost like it's like you can imagine, like, he was at Man City, but you can almost imagine like Chelsea or Man City doing it. Like, we've got no intention of playing this guy. It's really weird, and could we have spent that money on a player that would have really improved the team? Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't loads of money, but
Still
sure.
significant.
Why not add that to the transfer fee for Elyounoussi? And rather than getting Elyounoussi, get Promes instead.
Yeah.
For a bit more money, bit more,
But
a
it's
bit
more
closer to the
experience.
completed product.
Or get. You know what? My God, sign a player from a Premier League team that's actually good.
Oh, that's never going to happen, Tom.
I mean, Danny Ings is about the only one.
Yeah, and that was only because he'd had a whole year out injured.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about Shelley, we talked about Jeremy Wilson. Jeremy doesn't think Mark Hughes' job is on the line anytime soon. But if we lose to Fulham, what can we do after that?
But the games we've got coming up are... Personally, we're recording this on Monday evening. I'm very surprised Mark Hughes is still in a job after Saturday. The weird thing is, I was at the Newcastle game. Saints actually are not bad. If the game wasn't about scoring goals, if the game was about running around a lot and creating half chances, Saints would be up there with the best in the planet.
Yeah, well, I think we've created more chances this season than Manchester United.
But it's not, unfortunately. It's about putting the ball in the net, and we can't do that. So are they going to get rid of Hughes? I said I'm amazed he's still in a job. I would have thought with the international break coming up, I imagine he's still in a job because there is literally no one else they can find of that they think is going to be any better. But if we look at the games we've got coming up, I mean, we have to beat Fulham, but then we had to beat Newcastle.
And
we had to beat Watford.
Yeah.
Why? Fulham are scrapping for their lives. And we'll see. So Saints fans will look at Fulham and think they're there for the taking.
Yeah.
This is the game that will kick on our season.
But also, Fulham fans will be looking at that and going, "This is our chance to get a
It's
second
exactly
win of
the
season,
same. This is their chance to get a win and to get the confidence back. I mean,
even Cardiff City have won more games than us this season in the Premier League, and they look atrocious.
They're terrible, and they've not signed. They've got no Premier League players. They are literally exactly the same team that came up from the Championship.
And they've got Warnock as their manager.
Yeah. They've got supposedly a dinosaur, but he's got more teams promoted than any other manager in the UK, so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But if we don't beat Fulham, and we have to beat Fulham, if we don't beat Fulham, difficult ground to go to, small ground, a bit like the Dell. You can't see him staying. But then last season, how many times did we have? If we don't beat Palace, you can't see Pellegrino staying. If we don't beat Leicester, you can't see Pellegrino staying. He stayed. He stayed until they were they almost went down.
Yeah.
And as bad as we are, we ain't there yet.
No. So we are on equal points with, is it Huddersfield in the relegation zone at the moment?
I mean, Newcastle are above us. I think we're just outside the relegation zone.
But not by any points. It's on goal difference.
Yeah.
We're outside the relegation zone, which is not great. Anyway, let's get into the game against Watford. You mentioned it earlier. Starting lineup comes in, and the formation is different again. The personnel is different again. Mark Hughes still trying to find his best side, his best formation.
30 games in now, Mark Hughes.
Is that all competitions? It's 20 in the Premier League.
I think
isn't
it's
it?
already. I think like 30. I think it's maybe it's 20. I don't know.
Yeah, 20 in the Premier League.
28
so over half a season's worth.
Yeah, and he still doesn't know who his starting 11 is. He still doesn't know what the formation is. So we go 4-3-3, third formation of the season, the Southampton way, what they're meant to have been playing from the youth teams on up. And yeah, and again, Armstrong, first start of the season. Why on earth didn't he start against Newcastle? I don't know. He drops Elianusi. Gabbiadini comes in, a player that Mark Hughes clearly doesn't fancy. It's just so weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hoyt starts despite all of the match before the match saying Hoyt won't play. Yoshida comes in.
Yeah.
So
why was Stevens dropped then?
I don't know. Stevens. I can only talk about I was at the Newcastle game. Stevens looked good. Newcastle give nothing going forward, but what's going on? I was surprised that he didn't play Obafemi from the start because I almost felt like it would be his way of sort of getting the crowd. The crowd really want to see someone different.
Yeah. And he clearly hasn't rated Gabbiadini that much, but then suddenly he's telling us that Gabbiadini's best position is on the wing, and he's putting him on the wing.
Off the left.
It's just like, well, if that's his best position, it's obvious. What's happened in the previous 19 Premier League games that you've been manager for.
Also, Gabbiadini scored the classic Gabbiadini goal, didn't he? That sort of the ball drops in the penalty area.
And Gabbiadini
happens to be there.
Scuffing it away, falling over.
Yeah,
hitting it,
looking
but always
like
in the back of the net.
Extra out of Gamora. But he's there and he finds the ball falls to him. But these players it's like he's not in the same quality, but is it Miroslav Klose, the German forward who scored 13 goals in World Cups? The furthest one out was from the penalty spot, but there's a talent to being there when the ball drops, and it was great to see Gabby get a goal.
Totally agree. Before the Gabbiadini goal, we did concede an early chance to Deulofeu in that match. What did you make of the game overall? We've got the Gabbiadini goal. We'll get on to the Bertram penalty, which should have been for Watford. The Charlie Austin goal. All the chances and blows in the game, but overall, it kind of it was back and forth a bit, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Yeah, it appeared to be that way. Saints conceding a deflected goal in the 82nd minute is about the most Southampton-y thing that could have happened in that game.
At least we didn't concede another one after that.
Yeah, which we could have done. I don't know. What did it teach us that we didn't already know? It sounds blasé. It sounds flippant, but what did we learn? We didn't really learn anything. We were unlucky. We had a load of shots.
Yeah.
Did we really test the goalkeeper, maybe apart from Armstrong's? We didn't. I don't know what we learned.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we know Saints under Hughes can create scoring chances. We did against Manchester City, who hadn't conceded, I think, for 5 games before us. We could create chances.
Newcastle game, we created chances.
Yeah.
Newcastle.
We just can't finish them, though.
We just can't finish them. And also, we got... I don't really believe in it, but we just don't have any luck. Fundamentally, when it really comes down to it, we don't have luck. And I think the only bit of luck we've got all season is when we won the penalty against Brighton, which, they were all over us and we got a bit of luck. And even then, we couldn't hold on to it.
So maybe we went 2-0 up, which Charlie Austin tells us that would mean game over.
Game over?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Charlie.
The Charlie Austin goal was an atrocious decision from the officials, though. We cannot escape that. That was terrible. Wonderful little piece of work from Redmond.
Brilliant from Redmond.
Oh, it was beautiful. Cutting inside, in between the 2 Watford defenders.
Finding the pass.
Yeah, finding the pass. Charlie Austin, good shot. Did take a little bit of deflection. Not off Maya Yoshida.
But it takes another deflection, which is another reason, I think, why he can't really be offside, isn't it? It's mad. But I've referees drive you mad. And this is a personal dig at the referee, but I think, it exposes the wider concerns I have about the quality of refereeing, which is he didn't. Can you really tell me that referee, in the shape he's in, can keep up with those young men?
No, of course he can't.
Like, and it sounds.
He's carrying the extra timber that I'm carrying, and I don't run around for a business, for a job.
Mate, you look nothing like him. I mean, he looked like a. Yeah, he was carrying a lot of weight, and I'm sorry, like. They are meant to be athletes as much as the footballers are meant to be athletes, but
they're not.
They're not.
Well,
and if you're tired physically, you are going to be tired mentally, and you are going to make mistakes, and you are going to bow to pressure, and you are going to react to things in a way you shouldn't do. And it was a terrible decision, a really, really shockingly bad decision. And Charlie Austin went mad afterwards. But Charlie Austin's also been getting loads of grief, isn't he, on Twitter?
That's been turned into a meme with Blair's
Park, which is now he's achieved lasting fame. But good, you know what? At least it was a little bit of passion.
Yeah, I mean it was good to see the passion. Charlie Austin was clearly very, very frustrated. Obviously, Watford had a shout for a penalty. Bertrand yeah, but it definitely should have been a penalty. Bertrand basically went straight through Chalobah to not
5
even
yards
quite
from
get
goal,
the ball. Yeah. But I mean, basically, the referee was just atrocious. Both, no matter what way you look at it. Bertrand should have been sent off. Watford should have had a penalty. Southampton should have had another goal. The guy was not fit enough to manage two halves of a Premier League game as a referee.
Yeah, and someone said on Twitter, and again, this is anecdotal, but if you're, and then it was the season ticket holder saying, you expect to see the ball hit a referee once a season, maybe twice.
Yeah,
I think
you give a big cheer.
You give a big cheer
because
it's basically the best thing that happens in football. Or the second best thing, which is where people think the ball's gone in and it hasn't gone in. Yeah. That's the best. But then, it apparently hit him like 3 times. So, he can't get out of the way. He's too fat. So,
Chris Cooper, I hope you're not listening to this. But, seriously, mate, get down to the gym. Go for a run.
You're a professional athlete. Seriously, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And the problem is as well, Charlie Austin is not the fittest footballer. I think it's probably
but he
fair
can
to
outrun
say.
Chris Cooper.
Can easily outrun Chris Cooper. But also, they must be looking at him going, you're going to keep up with me. You're going to keep up with this game. Yeah. The pace that the game is at it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think is it Chris Hooper rather than Chris Cooper?
Is it Chris Hooper? Yeah. Sorry.
Way.
Either way, we've besmirched your good name.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know where we go with the Watford game. Ultimately, terrible refereeing aside, I mean, which actually we should probably bring up the fact that we have had some terrible decisions against Watford last season.
Oh, God, last season was the worst.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
Jason Dickey emailed in. He's one of our favourite email inners. If you'd like to email in like Jason, saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looked much less dangerous after Ings went off, despite the fact that Ings was playing with an injury. Passing was terrible and sloppy. We gave away entirely too much possession, and this is my biggest complaint about the match. Yeah, we do that a lot. We do give away possession too much. Says rubbish defending with rubbish clearances. Yeah, okay, so the Watford goal came from an absolutely rubbish clearance. I think the missed penalty and disallowed goal bring too much attention away from a frustrating match. Again, something which Jeremy Wilson mentioned about, deflecting what basically the truth of what is happening is Saints are not being good enough. Yet all the talk is about a Charlie Austin Park life meme rather than Saints performance.
It's Trump. It's classic. It's deflection on the part of the team.
Did Saints outplay Wolves? I think it means Watford here. Yes. Because we certainly didn't outplay Wolves. Does that mean they probably should have won? Yes. Okay. Neither of those questions would be answered differently in almost any match we've played in the last 12 months. From my emails, I'm quite long-suffering with managers and board members and owners. Today was not any better than we have been seeing. This does not mean I am on the Hughes out campaign trail or blame Kruger or even Gal. I don't have any clue what steps need to be taken to fix the situation. I don't think we have a bad team or even that our own recruitment has been that poor. I know I'm a crazy man, put some brackets. There is simply some sort of mental hangover in the club. Don't know if it's a lack of confidence or preponderance or arrogance, but there is something going on. Maybe we have missed on 3 managers in a row, but I doubt it. There's a cultural problem, a winning problem, and maybe the only solution is to try and survive and in the summer ship out the whole team and buy a new one. Without a clue. Jason. He does have a clue though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think mentally he's totally right. I think if you look at how Saints fold, we mentioned the Brighton game. 2-0 up at home to Brighton. Brighton probably the worst.
That is game over.
That's
Total
worst
game over.
away record of any team,
Yeah.
I think, in the Premier League. We draw 2-2. We concede within 2 or 3 minutes of taking a 2-goal
Even the
lead.
Metropolitan Police Force would have seen that game out if they were 2 up against
Yeah.
Brighton.
Hey, my dad played for the Met Police. It's a high standard of football, I'll have you know. Like
Sorry. What song do they come out to?
I fought the law, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought the Law of the Law one.
It's good.
Sorry,
And
just
more
to
of this
distract
sort of
you from
thing.
there. Yeah,
No, it's why Saints come out. Saints
Yeah.
are coming.
yeah.
The Pirates right. So yeah, like I've lost my train of thought. I can't remember where we were, but I think
Well,
he's
we're
right.
talking about-
It's
we're
a
talking about the
cultural. I think
mental, cultural.
I mean, we saw it. I keep banging on about it, but when I was at the Newcastle game, like it's just Saints don't believe they can score, and even when they get in a, I almost think they're almost overthinking it now.
Mm.
So Shane Long's chance against Newcastle at the very end, where if that had been like an Aguero would have just hit it to the top corner and it would have gone in. But because it's Southampton, because it's Shane Long, and because Shane Long is so conscious of his goal record, like they try too hard. They
try to place it in the
they
corner,
try and
didn't
place it, or they think about it. Whereas like the great footballers are so great because they don't seem to think, they just know. And Saints are trying to think.
Do you know who the player that I notice this in the most? Ex-Southampton player, Theo Walcott. If it's instinct, the ball goes in the back of the net.
Yeah.
If he thinks about it for half a second, it all goes horribly
It's
wrong.
confidence.
Yeah.
If you just give him one-on-one, or but the minute they have to do something, I don't know. Like Saints seem to have totally lost their ability to see out games. Against Leicester early this season, they kind of let Maguire lumber forward in the 94th minute. Like he's only going to do one thing. He's not going to, he's only going to shoot. Like the clearance for the goal on Saturday was awful. It takes 2 deflections and kind of goes in. Like I don't know. What do you do about that?
Well, I mean that's the thing. I think the whole attitude at the club needs to change. I think even if Kruger is trying to be honest with the fans and say, look, the Southampton way is now buying cheap, selling big, staying in the Premier League, just don't lead with that. Just tell the world that you're trying to push for European football, that these players are going to be playing in the Champions League in 3 years' time. Sell a bit of a story, At least if he shows some sort of ambition in his PR, something that we could kind of believe in and something that the players could believe in, then that might be the thing which would actually kick people on, because they're not thinking, I've got to score because otherwise we're going to get relegated and how awful that's going to be. They're going out and thinking, if I score and we win, we're going to be pushing on to Europe. It's just total mindset change, and it needs to come throughout the club, from the top through to the bottom.
If you look at everything the club says, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And I am biased to this because it's my job, but it's terrible.
Can we get Tom Parker in to do the Saints PR?
Yeah. I don't know if I think I'd run a mile. But like everything they say is terrible. So if you go down in layers, like Gal doesn't say anything, which is terrible. Kruger does these awful interviews, which despite, I don't think it got good. The Echo gives him a good go. But I mentioned this to you earlier, John, when he talks about we've got a great roster. Now, if you're someone who is an imposter into the world of football, and he is an imposter, he's a hockey man. I'm not saying that this is not transferable, but football, they're old school. Yeah. And people think he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Don't start talking about a roster.
Yeah.
You've got a squad. You haven't got a roster. No one in football outside North America has ever called it a roster. Like, the manager, with this, we're not far off where we want to be. So we're either not far off where we want to be, or we're being cheated every week by officials. So there's no positivity there. Players drive people mad. Like Ward-Prowse last season, we're confident we'll stay up. We're not thinking about relegation.
The rest of us,
everyone else is, and you were only about 4 points off it come the end of the season. So everything that comes out of the club is awful. Then you have, on top of that, the most important thing of all of it, the match day experience. Despite all the fireworks and the nonsense, it's awful. So where do you, as a Saints fan, where do you take joy from? If anyone can tell us, I'd love to hear it.
I take joy from playing with Lego with my 3-year-old.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice.
I think from beer.
I take joy from Sunday roast with my fiance.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's not from Saints at the
it's
moment.
Not from
is
Saints, but you know, this is the problem, isn't it? No one would care if they turn in the occasional decent home performance.
So anyway, let's talk about joy, and let's talk about if you were a foreign football fan coming to England to watch your first Premier League game,
travelling from the other side of the world.
Yeah,
about a 12-hour flight. Where would you go, John?
Probably Saints versus Newcastle.
Oh, yeah, damn right you would.
Tom, please tell me you've managed to get some semblance of joy into our Japanese contingent's lives. They came to watch Saints versus Newcastle. They're interested in Yoshida, who obviously didn't play. It's their first Premier League game. What's Japan famous for? Amongst many things, it's incredibly reliable train service. Hopefully that's all the best of that.
Oh, yeah. So if you've ever been to Japan, you'll know that trains, when they say they leave on time, they leave on the minute that it's due to leave.
On the
second.
second. The clocks count down on the time on the second.
Things are never late.
No.
There's no industrial action. Everything works perfectly.
And the food's incredible in Japan.
And the food's incredible in Japan.
Everyone's incredibly polite.
Everyone's polite, and yeah, everyone waits for everyone else to get off the train.
You don't have to lock up your bicycle when you leave. No,
there's no swearing. Everything is lovely. I've spent time in Japan. It's really nice. Lovely people. Welcome to Southampton. These poor guys. You know what? They were two of the nicest guys. And you can't remember their names. I can't remember their name. I've got a lovely photo, and we'll put a photo of me and my dad and the guys. We travelled with them. We met them at Waterloo. No, they came to my house on the Friday. They interviewed me at home. I had to wear a shirt, which was an old Friends Providence shirt, which I think has shrunk over time. Which is I think the shirt shrunk. And they interviewed me about Saints and about why Saints and what football means to me. And then we went. So we met them at Waterloo on Saturday morning. Obviously, there's a train strike. Thanks, Southwest Trains. So it's not a big deal, guys. We'll get on the train. We'll go to Basingstoke. There's a train leaving Basingstoke. We get on the train. It's heaving. There's Newcastle fans on it. It's good. We do loads of interviews. We get to Basingstoke. We've got 3 minutes to get on the train to Southampton. We can't get on it because everyone's trying to do the same thing. So we end up getting a cab from Basingstoke to Southampton.
Oh, my life.
With these poor Japanese fans and this bemused Japanese TV crew.
So the film crew, you, your dad, and 2 Japanese football fans are all in one cab?
Another Saints fan called Rao and his son. We all went in these cabs. This convoy. It's convoys. No, we had those. It was 3 It was a 3-cab convoy.
Oh, my God.
Taking these poor bemused Suns fans, and then they get to the ground. We do some filming outside the ground. And then, we go and we watch Saints Newcastle. Possibly one of the most unexciting sporting experiences man's ever had. But you know what? They were lovely and they're good people. And I think that, if you're going to come all this way and you're going to support Saints, then, the club, I don't think was particularly good to them as far as I could work out. They didn't get an interview with Yoshida.
They didn't?
No. They didn't put him up. The tickets were screwed up, so they kind of got split away from the rest of the crew. It wasn't the finest. Again, this is Saints communicating. Saints. This is Japan. This is one of the world's wealthiest economies.
I thought that all the outside of football stuff we were okay at.
No, according to this, we were garbage. Not that they said this. They didn't say this, but the impression I got was that we, freaking hell, Saints. They've travelled
from
thousands
the other side
of miles.
Of the planet.
I've been to Japan. It's like a 12.5-hour flight. It's miles away.
So they don't get the interview with Maya.
They don't get the interview with Maya. They
don't get seats together.
I think the fans were sat together, but they were with a broader crew, and they were kind of split apart. It wasn't it didn't seem to be great. I mean, they didn't say a word in criticism, to be fair, but it was. But I mean, maybe what? It's a classic, though, isn't it? If they'd won the game, you wouldn't remember any of this stuff. But they were lovely people.
Did they enjoy themselves?
Yeah, they seemed to enjoy themselves. I just think that they probably were just a bit underwhelmed.
Yeah.
You know, because everything you hear about it is the quality's so high. You know, it's so thrilling. Like Premier League football is best football in the world.
The atmosphere.
The fans, atmosphere. You know, like Saints were, you know, where I was sat. I was in the north of, and Saints fans were going for the Saints players after about 5 minutes, and you know, after about 70 minutes, it turned into full-on booing, and at 90 minutes, it wasn't pretty. But anyway, yeah, but they were lovely people, and yeah.
Please come back when times are better.
It's not always like this, guys.
No. Okay, so I mean, I asked the question on Twitter to the Saints fans, where do we go from here? And I suppose the most true answer was Fulham away. And that is next for Saints. It's a dire situation. A lot of people are talking about relegation. They're talking about going to the pub to drown their sorrows. And lots of people are saying, well, we're going to go to Fulham away. That is so important, isn't it?
I mean, this is what, our third 6-pointer in 4 games, is it? Newcastle, Watford, and now Fulham. You know, I don't think anyone thought we'd get anything else.
Must win for Mark Hughes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a must win for Fulham.
Must win for Fulham.
You know, I think they're probably both managers looking here at could be their last games. Jukanovic seems to be probably even more inept than Hughes in terms of chopping and changing and no formation. But look, Fulham are there for the taking. Everyone has gone to Fulham and got something, I think, pretty much. You know, like, Fulham are there, and we can, you know, let's just say we get a win at Fulham. John, where does that put us, all things remaining equal?
Well, if we beat Fulham and nobody else plays or therefore gets a point, we'll be up to the heady heights of 14th in the table.
I'm getting a nosebleed just thinking about that, John.
It's still very, very close. I mean, there's 2 points that separate Newcastle in 14th and Huddersfield in 19th. Fulham are actually desperate. Fulham are on 5 points. So
Fulham won a game, haven't they? I think they won one.
Yeah. Fulham need to win this game more than we do. Or as soon as they win it, we're also like down in deep doggy.
We become Fulham.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, Saints have to win. It's an interesting one. Obviously, because it's an away game. So what does Hughes do? Does he pitch up with 4-3-3 away from home? Be a pretty brave thing.
Well, we know that Fulham can't defend.
Yeah, you're right.
So we need to go gung-ho. If there's ever a game where you need to go gung-ho, it's Fulham.
And what are Fulham considered, like 2 goals on average a game or something? 3 goals on average a game? It's
Fulham have conceded 31 goals in 12 games.
So they're exceeding 2.5 goals.
Nearly 3 goals a game.
Yeah, 2.5 goals a game, which is phenomenal going, really. Look, you know, we need to do 2 things. We need to win and we need to fill our boots. You know, like, don't they? They need to, like, winning 1-0 is almost not going to be enough.
I take a 1-0.
Yeah. I take a 1-0 own goal. You know, but wouldn't it be great to see them fill the boots? You know, to get 3 or 4, to play with real, like, shackles off.
Yeah, maybe get Obafemi on, you know, for a second half, get a brace, you know.
Yeah, get Redmond, get a goal. Redmond deserves a goal.
Shane Long ain't playing.
He's got a bad ankle, hasn't he? But so I don't know, but we cannot stress this enough. They have to win.
Yeah, I suppose the big thing is if we don't beat Fulham, we've got Leicester in the EFL Cup with Man City in the next round. That game, you know, I pretty much don't care at this point. I like the Cups, but I can't see us ever getting past Man City in the next round. Then we've got Man United at home and Spurs away. So if we don't beat Fulham, then that's 3 games that we can look at without a victory. Then we have Cardiff away, which again is going to be must win, whether it's Hughes in charge or not at that point.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, the Fulham game I don't think can be understated in terms of its importance. I can't really think. I mean, the closest parable, which sounds nuts, is the Swansea game from last season. You know, it feels like that already, and we're going to be like 13 games into the season.
I don't feel quite as desperate as I did that.
But it's if you look at the run of games coming up, like we're not going to get any. You remember we had Swansea, but then I think we had to play the sort of Chelsea people. You know, like we knew we weren't going to get points, so we have to get points.
Yeah.
And Fulham are there for the taking, but they'll have had like us, international break, chance to work on it with the players, sort out their defence. Saints have to go away. Maybe better for Saints to be away.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, I mean, have you got anything else to add to the podcast, Tom? Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you think we should?
Not really. I know there's a lot of negativity, mostly from us. But look, what I would say is, look, the funny thing is they're not playing bad football. Like, they're not, and they've like 3 of the last 4 games they've played pretty well. They just need a break.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist. I think they'll get a break.
Break's coming against Fulham.
It has to come at some point.
Okay, well, on that note, a famous victory for Saints versus Fulham at Craven Cottage.
Come on, Saints.
Unfortunately, I won't be there. The tickets are already sold out.
I'm at Centre Park. It's going to be a nightmare on that one.
Oh, mate.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you've enjoyed listening to the Saints FC podcast, please do get in touch. Saints FC podcast at gmail.com or at Saints FC podcast on Twitter. Thank you so much for sticking with us. 50 episodes in. I cannot believe it. The audience numbers still continue to grow. People actually like listening to us chatting about Saints, Tom.
It goes to show that, they'll do anything rather than watch the team. Really.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.